And this is Theory of Limits, Part 3. In line with this perception of nature, the following examples show that curvature between the limits of straightness is also realized within the realm of human behavior and social, that is, legally regulated interaction. 1. The clearest sign of the existence of limits within a society are the actual borders of a country. These borders define the extent to which national laws apply and within which social, cultural, and economic regulations are regulated. Between these borders, a multitude of possible variations are permissible in terms of how and where people settle down, the regional area where they live, go to work, change their place of residence, spend their spare time, educate their children, and such. If someone wants to escape these societal patterns, the patterns of life and work, in order to avoid breaking the law, he or she would have to cross the border and live under a different jurisdiction, by other norms and within new borders. 2. The lawgiver in a society stipulates the maximum number of hours a human being is required to work without being able to claim overtime payments from his or her employer. Similarly, in every workspace, there exists a notion of the minimum number of hours that an employee must work before the manager steps in and issues an official warning or even initiates a cut in wages because of negligence and absenteeism. 3. We are faced with hundreds of traffic signs on the road that prescribes the maximum or minimum speed limit allowed or requested in order to secure a smooth flow of traffic. If someone exceeds the maximum speed limit or ignores the minimum speed limit, the traffic police will act on, and together with city officials, prosecute the person for having broken the law. 4. If a toddler burns his fingers on a hot stove, he has, despite the fact that he was told by his parents not to go near the stove, crossed the limit and is punished for its burnt fingers. He has also had a moving new experience, pain. This is because of our innate curiosity that sometimes causes a deviation from the rules and ignites some curved movement by sheer impulse. These examples illustrate that human beings needs to be restrained by legal order. This is the reason why Allah sent messengers to humankind who brought legislation in order to put lawless society back on the straight track. Before it was Muhammad's turn to bring a new message, Allah decided to send messengers who, in each his own society, enforced concrete punishment that were expressly stipulated for each individual crime. It was a type of direct, explicit legislation that ended with Muhammad's messengerhood, which marked the beginning of a new legal concept, lex liminalis, law, by which humans legislate between the legal limits that the book provides. Muhammad's message not only launched a new type of human legislation, but by allowing change and non-linearity. It also best reflected the nature of humans' Hanific predisposition. As such, it essentially reflects the religion of Islam that fully corresponds to the innate propensity of all people on this earth, even if they are not yet aware of it. Legislation all over the world that is based on the existence of limits, even if legislators are aware that they notionally fulfill the guidelines set out by the book. We sincerely believe that sooner or later most people will realize their natural inclination to this type of legislation, following the model of Abraham, who was leaning towards his Hanific rectitude of conduct even before he received divine revelation. Long ago, we bestowed right judgment on Abraham, and we knew him well. Surah Anbiya, verse 51. Abraham's insight into the cosmological truth of Hanific law were passed on directly to Muhammad. Since the book tells us that lex liminalis was not part of the Christian and Jewish legal systems, Abraham was not a Jew, nor yet a Christian, but he was true in faith and bowed his will to God, which is Islam, and he joined not God with God. Surah Al-Imran, verse 67. We hear, for example, that when the Jews were told to sacrifice a heifer, that's a young cow, they asked what specific kind of heifer they were supposed to slaughter. And we hear how God provided every detailed answer to every question. Example, not a single detail of the law was left open to be fulfilled by human legislation. In questions of penal law, we are told that the punitive logical of their lex talionis require them to immediately punish a crime by maximum force, and a like-for-like mentality that induced indiscriminate punishment. We ordain therefore them life for life, eye for eye, nose for nose, ear for ear, tooth for tooth, and wound equal for equal. Surah Ma'idah, verse 45. In contrast, Islamic legislation tried to avoid punishment being indiscriminately enforced and instead considered mitigation as absolutely vital. In the case of theft, for example, the amputation of the thief's hand must be only regarded as the last resort if other forms of punishment have proved ineffective or in the type of theft was very serious. If, for instance, only a slice of bread had been stolen, and if this was not done out of sheer menace but because of desperate hunger, to cut off a person's hand as if he had stolen somebody's possession out of greed and pure self-indulgence is a violation of the flexible and moderate character of Islamic law. Yes, we accept that Muhammad had indeed once ordered the amputation of the hands of thieves in Medina, but we don't know the exact details of the case, or what was stolen, or how many priors there were, or if he was or if they was in a group or alone, and for what purpose. But we should not forget that the second Khalifa, Umar ibn Khattab, ruled against the Prophet's example and pardoned a number of thieves. In doing so, the Khalifa certainly did not abolish the had penalty for theft once and for all. What he did was exercise his right to judge each case individually. If a theft did not occur in him sufficiently grave or sufficiently proved, he did not apply the maximum penalty. Because of this inbuilt flexibility of Islamic law, Umar, opting for a different form of penalty, did not violate the divine ruling on theft. What he did was to simply move with his human legislation between the upper limit of punishment for the theft amputation of the right hand and its lower limit, full pardon. And we should add that what Umar did as a Khalif in 7th century Arabia has today become common practice in legal systems around the world, especially the West. This makes our argument even stronger that the aspects of limits is a natural element in all human legislation. While Omar acted on impulse and judging case of theft differently, we today can benefit from the finding of mathematical statistics and the scientific theories of limit that provide much more sophisticated means for pursuing a further diversification of Islamic legislation. We no longer need help of the scholars who would only continue their search for the umpteenth justification for amputation. Instead, we will use modern theories that can lead us to new horizons in the formulation of Islamic law. Thank you for following Theory of Limits Part 3. Part 4 is next. Let us hear your thoughts